Lord, I ask your guidance for this meeting. I ask that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I ask your blessings on our church and on our work. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Last week we came up with, we're looking at these same situations here, the same 1, 2, 3s. I want your input. I would ask that if you, in the front, if you kind of stand up and turn a little bit to the back so folks will be able to hear you, so your voice won't all. And if you're talking really soft, please make an effort to talk louder. Please, that would be super. Let's just start. What do you like about the current Sunday schedule?
I like Crossroads hours.
What do you like about the current Sunday schedule? When I was teaching high school, I would say something really outrageous, get my students to react to it. Tell me what you think. This is your turn.
Well, one of the things I like is where, with the 8:30 is I feel like it's a great start to my Sunday. And then when I go home, I just had this, I don't know, this wonderful beginning to my day. I enjoy that.
I like the option of having 2 services to attend because sometimes, the earlier in the day doesn't always go great, so being able to hit the second one is nice.
It's an interesting point. It's the first time I've heard that point. It's good. What else? What else? What do you like about this situation? What do you like about the change? Bill?
Well, I probably speak for a lot of the choir members, but we usually be there at 8 o'clock in the morning and go until about 11:30 in the morning if we like doing just one service.
So it's an early start for the choir rehearsal.
Yeah, but an early end, earlier than it used to be.
And in that regard, the sanctuary feels better with more.
That's a good point.
Now, that doesn't mean it has to be at 8:30.
One of the things I enjoy about having the one service is if you went to the early or the late, you might go months without visiting people that you're pretty fond of as Christians and not see them. Or now, we kind of the fellowship with our entire church.
Fellowship with the entire congregation. That's a good point. What else? What else? Anybody positive about this time change? If you make a positive comment, that doesn't mean we're going to hold you to it. I just want to hear what. I just would like to hear what this is an opportunity to say how you feel about a lot of things, about what you don't like about the Sunday schedule. But let's look at the things that we do like first. Any other comments about this? Edith?
Well, I'm just going to go along with that one, that I do like the idea of the sanctuary being built, and that I do see more people. I do
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
That's one.
That's a one positive. Okay. Anybody else? Joe?
We're not 3 different churches.
We're not 3 different churches. What else? By the way, the reason I'm writing your comments down, and we're also videotaping this, that there's going to be a report to the board about what your ideas, your feelings, your thoughts. So we're trying to just get some input from the congregation. What else? Anybody else on this first note? Going? Going? Gone. Okay, let's move to number 2. What do you not like about the Sunday schedule? And don't everybody speak at once. What do you not like about the Sunday schedule?
Getting up at 6:30 in the morning?
Getting up early. This isn't a retirement community. We're getting older. Yeah. Wait a minute. Joe breaks it on me. Okay.
Okay, well, I just feel rushed from Saturday night on. You know, that I have to go to bed earlier, that I'm gonna have to get up earlier.
So it impacts your Saturday night.
Also, yeah, also,
It's very hard for people to get up and get ready, you know, especially us old folk.
All right, get up, get ready. What else?
Well, it's not this time of year, but I'm thinking in the winter. I think it's darker and it's icier, so I think the 8:30 start in winter just has more risk, and I think it impacts attendance.
Okay. It is more risk in the winter.
It is.
Yeah. What else? What else about this current Sunday schedule that you'd like to tell me about that will go? Yeah, Sheldon.
I'd just like to put an exclamation mark in that last one. That's going to be especially true for those that come from Holland and South Haven and Hamilton.
That's another good point. What else? What else?
I can't support this with actual numbers, but
Okay.
it seems to me we have lost some folks.
I was looking at a chart that's furnished to the board. Let me see if I can get this remembered correctly. The high Sunday in 2014 was about 600. The high Sunday in 2015 was about 370, 375. The high Sunday so far in 2016 has been right at 200. So we've seen a decline in attendance, not just in this past since we bumped this schedule, changed it, but we have seen some decline. A lot of mainline churches are struggling, so we're not the only one. I particularly love Jeff's sermon this morning. It's places the emphasis on us as individual Christians, what we need to be doing. So, what else about this schedule, this current schedule on Sunday morning? Are you comfortable with it? You don't like? I'll take either one at this point. Is something someone said sparked something you want to say?
just reinforce the ice, because the man that does our drive doesn't always even get there before. You know,
Reinforce the ice. Bill?
I suspect it's kind of hard on the staff to be able to get the service ready for 8:30 in the morning. A little later, just make it a little earlier than
It starts there Sunday morning really early.
Well, didn't we have it early, wasn't it 8:30?
For some reason, the discussion last week in the town hall gathering was about time, of course, and then someone from the audience said, but we used to start at 9:45. You know, we can't make any changes. Well, what she was saying was that we've been accustomed to doing something one way, and now we've changed and we're doing it a different way, so we can't make any more changes. It was that, and that's kind of, you know, something I was getting last week from have, yes, Shelley.
Just a comment on that, this was an experiment. I mean, we experimented, we have to think about the experiment and decide whether it's gonna be quantified anywhere. I think another change is not a big deal. It's justified.
It was an experiment, so what results are we gonna get? Charlie?
Carol, can I join on an experiment in the reverse order? We switch traditional to early. Is it possible to go and reverse that? Put the contemporary early and the traditional later?
I'll put it out there.
Run that as an experiment and see how it does in terms of attendance and so forth. We'd have comparison.
Let me just put something out there for your consideration. When you've got a brand, and our brand is the congregation meeting at specific times, and when you change that brand, you have to get a lot of information out, a lot of cost in advertising, a lot of cost in signage. I don't know if our church can afford that right now, but I will certainly try that there is an interest in the flip-flop from the early service traditional to flip-flop it with the, Jane.
Just one point that was brought up last week by Kathy Winter, who is part of the Gatherings band, they're singing, you know. She said they have to meet every week for an hour to practice prior to their service. So flip-flopping would mean that they're starting at 7:30 in the morning trying, that's hard. That's very difficult. So that's kind of a problem for them.
Oh, sure. 8 o'clock is a problem for the regular class. You know, it's a similar.
Yeah.
A lot of us at that point in time did not know that.
This was an experiment.
Our choir comes in 30 minutes early. What else? Anything about this? I'm sorry. Nope. I still want to talk to you about what don't you, I want the board to know what you're thinking. The board wants to know what you're thinking. What your thoughts are about this. Shelley?
One of the factors driving the schedule is the crossroads hour, which I agree is an appropriate thing for us to do. My own interest, however, would be in sessions that deal with contemporary issues from a Christian point of view, as opposed, and this might be one-shot deals or 2-week deals, but as opposed to a video 6 or 8 week from right now. That particular kind of activity in Boston just doesn't.
The church we attend in Arizona in the winter, they have a Sunday school hour at 9. Then about 10 to 10:25, they have a fellowship room. And then at 10:30, they have their one worship service. The Sunday school hour has about 3 traditional Bible studies, and then about 3 classes that are just contemporary topics. And pretty much the class decides where they want to go next, except they do use prepared materials for the traditional Bible study. So that's a possibility, and I think we've heard that from not only from you, but from other people that like something else in more social issues and that sort of thing in the more contemporary topics.
And maybe shorter, you know.
A shorter session.
4 to 6 weeks can be a big commitment. Getting back to the time thing, is it possible instead of 8:30 and, you know, not like the other times, do it 9, 10, 11?
I got it.
What?
I got it.
All that down. Wait, you didn't get to numbers, I'm sorry.
I was saying the same thing, I wanted number 3 to come up.
Okay, let's just move on to number 3, and then if there's some other comments that come back, we can fold them back into those other questions. Give me some options, right? We got the 9, 10, 11 as a possibility.
That was actually my suggestion.
Okay.
But that extra half hour means, it's going to mean a lot.
There's no option of running both the services at the same time because we share a pastor.
Somebody has suggested that, Karen, services. some sort of sharing with the pastor?
That's what Justin's part of the shared also is that we did preach two services that were Saturday, Monday, starting in half an hour after the other, preach early one, later in the other.
Oh, and Jim was saying that Pastor Jeff shared with us and the board that he was, the church he came from, they had, for instance, like a 9:30 service starts, then they had a 10 o'clock service start, and then he shared with the pastor alternating between those. So there's a possibility that two services at the same time.
Well, it was one sharing with the other pastor, he would do both, but he would do early in one
Oh, I see.
and late in the other.
Oh, okay,
So he
okay.
would do both services.
Bill?
Christian services, some churches in Holland that actually have a Saturday night service. And they actually include with that, a dinner that they provide to people that charge something for it. It's not very expensive, but it's usually a very nice and done dinner. And it's a way of trying to bring more people in, which I think is probably what should be our focus, is how we move our future here.
Bill, this church that you're talking about that does that, I'm assuming this would be a like a gathering contemporary service, and then they don't do a gathering contemporary service on the Sunday?
This church is big enough, they probably do both.
Okay,
But this is something they've done to try to increase their membership and their outreach.
so this is more of a gathering contemporary.
Yeah. Saturday night,
Okay. And they conclude with a meal. Did I get that?
actually, I think they started.
Oh, sorry.
But is it an add-on as opposed to replacing the Sunday?
I don't know that. It could be very well. It's a really big church. With multiple ministries, so that makes it easier.
What else? Other options?
I had a suggestion. Jeff and I were just, talking about different ideas and, there seems to be some folks that would like to see the early service start half an hour later, and there are some from the gathering that don't really want it to end later, that would create problems on that side. One possible idea, and it has some problems as well, but it's an idea, just to mull over, is to just have your two services starting at times that are agreeable for people, but have the Sunday school hours, like classes are going on while the services are happening. Now, what's not so good about that, that does solve one problem where people, have their services starting at a time that's more agreeable, but you're not able to have fellowship with people that are attending the opposite service. So that's one of the negatives, in my opinion, is that you miss out on being able to be with people from both services if you want to attend some of those classes. But it was one idea. And then another idea was to have Wednesday night share groups and have dinners that are every Wednesday. And, you could have a variety of different types of groups that, could bring everybody together. But then again, some people, it might be an extra night to come out that could present hardship for some people, whether it's weather-related issues with travel or children's activities that might conflict, but it's just throwing ideas out.
One of the things the board has looked at is to expand the Wednesday night program, and hoping to go to a second and fourth Wednesday night dinner. So that's a potential possibility.
We have done that, I don't know how many years ago we did that, we did a second and fourth Wednesday. And the second Wednesday was dinner, but then there were also groups for teens and children, and a couple of groups, groups that met, adult groups that met afterwards. I don't know what the attendance was compared to the fourth Wednesday, but I led one of the groups on the second, and it was really well attended. So it has been done. We did do that.
Do you have any idea how long ago it was, how long it was?
This is back when Randy Smith was still here. 10 years.
About 15.
No.
And it was teens and adults?
Teens, adults, kids.
One of the ideas Jeff and I were tossing around with the Wednesday night, whether it's twice a month or 4 times a month or however it would be, we're talking about wanting to increase our church membership. And I think that one of the things that draws families in to attend and become more involved, if we had children's choirs, parents and grandparents love to come and watch their children and grandchildren sing and perform up in front of the congregation. And that, I think, would help increase the church's membership.
We draw people from the community for our fourth Wednesday night dinner. And some of them are already involved in church, but I don't know that all of them are. So I do know that, and that's another avenue you're absolutely right to increase membership and to participation. And a chance to know people who are from the traditional as opposed to the contemporary. So it makes those people more than just one Wednesday night a month. Who else? What else? Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up? It's interesting that some of the things you're saying, some of you were here last week, so you're saying some of the things you said before. But it's interesting that some of the exact same things that this group is saying is what I heard from the contemporary folks last week also. So this is, I think we're in sync in a lot of places, so we can just get this worked out. What else? Anything else about options that you'd like to talk about for Sunday schedule? Jello.
I'd just like to reinforce the 9-10.
What else? Anybody have anything else?
I have a question. How did the contemporary feel about changing their time?
Don't mess with the contemporary service.
That's kind of what I had a feeling, yeah.
That was the quote. Don't mess with the contemporary service.
But they already changed.
Yeah, I'm part of the contemporary service, and I don't think.
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm part of the contemporary service, and I don't think that's an accurate statement.
You don't think it's an accurate statement? Oh, that's interesting. There was, let me give you some preface about that statement that was made in the gathering last week, was that looking at total attendance for the gathering and looking at some line graphs, pull some numbers out that was given to the board. The people that were there, we only had about a 16% attendance from the gathering. So this, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Brad
Brad?
Smith, yes.
Okay. That saying that he doesn't think that's a valid assumption for the contemporary service. That's interesting because that's diametrically opposed to what I heard last week.
But you just said,
Yes, it was a small percentage, 16% of what I figured to be their total attendance for
So those
that.
could be the people who did not want to change who showed up.
Very, that's
That's right. That's right.
So I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point too. So we're hoping to get more feedback from that group this morning. So that's extremely interesting. What else about this Sunday?
I'll just
Yes, Fred.
piggyback on that. I just want to ask her, I don't think.
Wait a minute, could you stand up, talk just a little louder?
I don't think, I'll just speak loud. I don't think everybody's married to one time. I think 15 minutes, half hour, 40 minutes maybe is not a big deal. But I think if you move that group to an 8 o'clock, 8:15, I think you're going to lose attendance, primarily because it's difficult for the younger families to get their kids up on time. You know, right or wrong, it's just the way that it is. That's my observation.
How about 11?
I think there you're pushing it too late, to be honest with you. I was fine with 9:45, I'm fine with 10:30. I'd be fine with 9:15-ish. You know, I think we gotta throw some ideas out there.
Right.
And then to see what sticks. We'll see. I'll be interested to see. I just wanted to come and sit and listen today to hear other people's concerns.
There were 2 points that were brought up last week about time, specifically for the contemporary versus traditional, was that a lot of young kiddos are in that gathering. You bump that to 11 o'clock in a start time, then you have going to 12, and you've got kiddos who are absolutely starved. Now, our 6-year-old granddaughter gets nasty sometimes. So, just putting that out there. And the second thing is that somebody said, well, you're used to getting these kids up to go to school. And someone else responds, yes, but this is our time and we don't have to. So, you know, you're getting both sides of that coin right there, which I think is important, and we're going to have to, you know, there's going to be some discussion. Cindy,
Maybe we can switch hours, summer compared to winter.
Again, you come up with a branding issue. Summer compared to winter switch.
Because then that ties into the school year.
So just the school year.
Yeah. September.
I don't know what time should be, but there's something to think about.
That's absolutely. We're looking for options. The board is looking for options. The pastors, the staff are looking for options. That's good. Did I see somebody else getting ready to talk?
There could be a compromise, just throwing it out there could be a compromise with time where you could do 8:45, 9:45, and 10:45. I know it's just 15 minutes, but both sides would kind of be compromising and meeting in the middle in terms of, you know, some of the unhappiness over times. Just throwing it out there.
Let me also share something with you. George, can I put you on the spot? Would you share what you did about Mike Van Dornick last week? Mike Van Dornick was interim organist, traditional service, had a very severe stroke, paralyzed on the right side, just struggling, but doing much, much better. The Lord has said that nothing is impossible, and we're praying for miracles for him. George, would you mind sharing
Well,
what you said?
just was there with Mike's sister, and towards the end of the conversation, he can't speak very well, but he should be paralyzed in all probability on the right side of his body for the rest of his life. And he's been an organist, he's been a pastor his whole life in the Reformed Church, and towards the end of the conversation, you could sort of see a little bit of a tear well up in Mike's eyes, and he just said, I really wish I could worship in God's house again. And, you know, just, he wouldn't care whether it was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or 1, 2, 3, 4. This man just wants to get back into God's house. Kind of sad, kind of poignant moment.
Very poignant moment. It kind of puts things into perspective, but still, again, not to take away from what you're saying, because I understand this. This can be difficult to get here. I hate early mornings. I despise them. So, just one of the handouts that Kathleen gave us at the women's retreat was a devotion. And in one of the devotions, it talked about a sacrifice of time. So when I read that devotion, I stopped pretty much complaining about 8 o'clock choir on Sunday morning. But it's a sacrifice of time that I need to make. Bill?
So, along this, I had a conversation with Carly the other room. I think it was after choir practice, and our comments were to each other that we really would go with whatever was decided by the church.
lot of people because of the time. And I think it's people that have been very important to this church.
That, you mean like the 11 o'clock people who don't come to 8:30, I didn't come to
We're looking at numbers. I don't think we have any firm numbers on that yet, but we're just, the board is. What else?
And another thing, if people don't come to church and if they don't give automatically to the church, if they don't show up, there's not gonna be anything in the place. And we need to think about that.
Okay. Absolutely.
We need to support the church.
Absolutely. What else?
Are people that don't come anymore, are they ever contacted, you know, and encouraged to come back, or?
There has been some contact. I don't know how much of that has been. I can try to find out.
Okay. Just out of curiosity.
Charlie.
Excuse me, one of those people, Jan, we talked to one, and it was too early. They were crying out, they're not crying out, because it's just too early. So, excuse me.
The time was a
That's one
factor.
direct contact feedback, you know, that's one, but.
One of our, it's hard on some of our folks who have medication schedules to get these meds in a timely manner that are very significant medications. So I think that's an issue too. What else? Anything else?
I have a question.
Sure.
Or just one. How about 11:15 for the traditional?
You want to watch me do handsprings down the hall?
No, I'm serious. Well, it's you know, and then the contemporary can go to 9:15, and I think that's a half an hour difference from the original. And I think that's pretty flexible for the contemporary people.
So you're saying 9:15 to start for traditional?
Yeah.
I mean contemporary.
Yes. And then you get back to your 11 o'clock, you're closer to 11 o'clock, because the one thing, I'm a contemporary, and personally, I don't like the 10:30 because it's too late. It's too late for me. I don't like it. I don't like half of my day being gone when I get home.
I don't think you get a lot of feedback from the traditional service. No, I take that back. There are some people who really do like 8:30 in the morning. Stephen?
Just a couple of things. One on attendance. Last week we had 247 people in attendance, and the figure was quoted, the highest was 200. So I wanted to correct that. Also, in 2014 and 2015, we had joint services that caused some of those spikes that were references. So we need to be a little careful with it. That's
Well,
right.
the 200 that I was saying, we may have had 247 last week. I was looking at a time frame between when we started when we moved the time service to like the middle of April. So I didn't have all those numbers. I should have made that more clear. It was not through like last Sunday. So we may be spiking, we may be hitting more people
Yeah.
with the weather.
Well, and the other encouraging thing from last week is that our donations are up twice of what we have been running for the year. So that's encouraging.
That is
Look at
encouraging.
that. The last thing, because you know I always do it in threes, Carol.
So do I, Stephen, and I didn't get to my number 2 and number 3 yet. So no, just kidding.
Last week we had about 80 people attend from primarily the traditional service. This week we've got 33, and our attendance last week in 8:30 was 112. So we're wondering if we've saturated the number of people that we probably would reach, and do we need to have another meeting next week is my question, and what you feel about that.
Anybody have any heartburn feelings about that, one way or the other? Sure.
I guess before I'd answer that question, I want to know what the percentage of the gathering attends today. How good a measure are we getting of their opinions?
Well, one of the things I wrote is that with only a 16% based on my numbers that I pulled from a line graph, so it was kind of arbitrarily looking at a line graph, pulling numbers from when we first started, the time change until middle of April to the end of April. I'm not exactly sure how long that information I had, how long that time frame was. But it didn't come, it ended in April, I do remember that.
I'm talking about these meetings.
Right, right, but what I'm saying, I based about 130 average for the gathering attendance, but that included a big spike that they had on Easter Sunday, so that kind of skewed it a little bit. But based on that 130 and the number of people that were there last week, it was only about 16%. So how can you give, how can you draw really firm conclusions from that small part of the whole? That exactly the point is. Chris?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the figure last week was 135 attended the gathering last week. You had 21 in your audience last week.
But let me do a caveat to that is also we did not provide childcare last week. So that might be an effective piece of this. And they are providing childcare this week. So that may be the difference. I will have to receive in terms
It's
of.
also very close to lunchtime, and people could have already, they've got hungry kids.
Yep.
But I'm very encouraged by all the different kinds of ideas that are being thrown out, and I guess I think it's wonderful that it's being taped so the board can all review it and discuss it and pray over it together. And I do have concerns about how the board wants to proceed with making changes, and what is going to be the best way to get a true picture of what the church really wants. What's going to be the format by which they get more input? Is it going to be a survey through email or mailed out to people, or is it going to be, how? I guess I'd like to see the board really think it through as to what's going to be the best format to reach the most people, to find out what people truly would like.
It's interesting, one of the things I have not heard that I heard from this group last week is blended service. As an option.
We thought that was our meeting notes.
It was from last week. It was, I just thought it was interesting and I had not heard it. My favorite song is Jesu Joy of Man's Desire, so it's hard for me to think about blended service. So, but that's something that has come up. One of the comments that someone made that in their church that they attend off-season Florida or wherever it was, is that every month that has a fifth Sunday meeting, they do a blended service.
That would be a good idea, so that we can get to know them and they get to know us.
Carol?
Yeah,
Sort of aside, but one of the, I don't know about anybody else, but I miss children in worship.
Yes, we do.
We have none. I've never in my life been in a church where I can't see the kids